Today we're going to talk a little bit more about feeding your snake. So previously we put out the video about, we'll say, what should I feed my snake? So, we talked a little bit about, that most of the time we're feeding rodents, usually mice or rats. But, maybe there's some alternatives depending on the snake and all of that. But this time I want to talk a little bit about how often when you should feed your snake, because that's a little bit of a debatable subject and it's a little controversial. Today with me we have Delta here. She's our motley boa constrictor, so she's a motley boa imperator, or the BI. She's just going to be out for, because it's probably nice to have some reptiles in these reptile videos when I'm just kind of standing here reacting at you guys. So we talked. I mentioned kind of what you're feeding the snake. So in this video we're going to be talking about how often should we feed the snake. So for a very long time, the kind of standard rule of thumb has always been once a week. But as it turns out, a lot of the time that isn't actually necessarily the best way to do it. It's just an easier, convenient way for us. That way you can say, okay, it's Wednesday's feeding day. But as we've done a little bit more research and we've had them longer and we've, taken note of wild populations and different ways of doing things, we're actually we're starting to see that there are other ways to do it. And so that's what I want to talk a little bit about is a couple different ways that are a little bit different before. So right off the bat, the 7 day, once every 7 days, once a week thing, that can be fine, but it isn't necessarily the only way. So if you guys, most people have ball pythons, corn snakes, feeding once every week, perfectly fine. But for instance, say we have this boa constrictor Delta here. So Delta is a boa constrictor. They have slower metabolisms. Because they have slower metabolisms, what that means is that when they eat a rat or whatever it is that you're feeding her, it's going to take a little bit longer for her to break that down, absorb the nutrients from that prey item, and then for her to pass it. Sometimes it can take over a full week for her to fully metabolize a small rat. So if I'm feeding once a week, that means she's eating before she's done fully digesting and passing the previous prey item from the week previous. So for, a subadult older boa like this girl here, maybe once every 10 to 14 days might be a little bit better. And that kind of seems to be the thinking of a lot of people these days, is that, for older reptiles, once they're past maturity, they're into adulthood, they've attained adult size, back off the feeding a little bit. Instead of feeding once every 7 days, they're feeding once every, 10 or 14 days. For our large boa constrictors, we like Severus, that we've seen in a couple other videos before, she only gets fed once every 3 to 4 weeks because she's not breeding. She's an adult. She was actually a little chubby at the time. Yes, I don't like the face kisses, Delta. She only gets fed every so often, and she's perfectly fine. I don't have any, negative issues with me opening up the tub or the enclosure that she's in. She's never coming at me striking for food. She knows when food's coming, and that kind of prolonged thing is perfectly acceptable. There are a lot of people now who have started to think about seasonal feeding. And so when I meant to talk about seasonal feeding, what that is that, out in the wild, in certain populations around the world, in snake populations, there are times of the year where prey is very plentiful and times of the year where it's very scarce or even non-existent. So for instance, Hog Island boas. That's a subspecies of the boa imperators. They're found on an island off the coast of South America. Hog Island, obviously. What happens in places like that or other island boas where most of their prey is birds, and those come in seasonally to lay their eggs. So the same time of the year, every year, a large population of birds come to the island and nest and have their babies. During those months while those birds are present on the island, the snakes will feast on all of those birds that are coming in, between the birds and the baby chicks and things like that. And then they leave. And then for the most part, they don't really eat the rest of the year. They've actually monitored things like that. And they've seen that some, like island locality snakes, they will eat very heavily for 3 or 4 months. And then they will sometimes only have 1 or 2 meals the rest of the year. And they're perfectly healthy. And so some people keeping the hobby are starting to feed seasonally, where they'll feed, from March to August very heavily, and then they'll just entirely go off really, really slow to where they're nothing in the brumation periods, and then they start to bring that up again for breeding season. So that's maybe something that we can think about is, let's change it up a little bit. And a lot of it has to do kind of the species of it. So, for instance, colubrid species, they have a lot higher metabolisms. You can probably feed them a little often, like once every 7 days, every 7 to 10 days. Pythons, they're a lot heavier bodied, but their metabolisms are a little faster than like something like a boa constrictor here. So, 7 days is, probably still okay for a lot of people who have ball pythons or smaller things like spotteds or Stimson's pythons. But once you get up into larger things, like for instance, if you do have a large constrictor like a Burmese python or something like that, feeding once a week is kind of a lot for something like that. Then you're going to get a very heavy, obese snake. So maybe dialing that back. And a lot of this kind of has to do with monitoring and watching behavior and what your snake is looking like. There's a nice, neat little thing about what each type of snake looks like when it's healthy. Boa constrictors here, like Delta, they have kind of a really square look. And once you start getting around boa, that means you're getting obese. And when that happens, that can cause a lot of damage and strain on their internal organs, which can shorten their lifespan. So that's not something we want. Another thing to think about is the age of the snake. So for baby snakes, they're going to be needing to eat a lot more often than adult snakes. So even me, who feeds, pretty slow and a little bit more sparingly. So for our ball pythons, they feed once every 10 to 14 days, and the boas are every 14 to 20 days. That's just something that we like to do, and we'll vary it depending on the time of the year. If we're raising them up for breeding, we're going to hit them a little bit more often, because that's something that you need to think about, and with breeding and stuff like that, which we'll talk about in another video. But for babies, we'll be feeding them every 5 to 7 days depending on the species. For small little colubrids like our baby gray band, he's even eating every 5-6 days, where our baby boa and our baby ball pythons, they're eating once every 7 to 10 days, just like the other guys, where they're eating a little bit more often. But we'll be a little bit more adherent to that, where I know a lot of people who have been breeding snakes for a very, very long time, and over the past 4 or 5 years, they've just been kind of feeding once or twice a month, except for when it comes to item breeding times, and their snakes are perfectly healthy. They're maintaining great weight, and their temperaments and everything else are really great too. So this is just something I wanted to put out there a little bit. Hopefully I wasn't too ranty with you guys. I was trying to keep it on the shorter side. That this is just something for, kind of to think about. Do a little bit more research other than just listening to me talk about this. Because I've had snakes for a number of years now, but I haven't been doing it for a very, very long time. I just like to do a lot of research, and hopefully you guys do too. And so when you're doing research, thinking about, what can I do differently? What can I do better? Feeding your snake is a pretty basic, easy one that you guys can think about. And so, if you look at a bunch of other people doing different things, we've all seen the very fat snakes on YouTube and stuff like that. Something's probably not okay with that. But you also don't want to have a really skinny, unhealthy snake too. So just do your research, something to think about. And that's what this video is about. Again, sorry to repeat it so much, but it's just to get you guys thinking. There's other things to think about. Mostly the age of the snake, the species of the snake, how you want to do it. Are you trying to maintain it like how it would be done naturally in the wild, like seasonal feeding, or something that's just a little bit more easier for you, so that way you can maintain a nice seasonal schedule as long as it's not a detriment to the snake's health. Hopefully you guys did enjoy this video, or at least got something out of it a little bit, or something to think about. Please like and subscribe if you can. Hit that bell notification. Big thanks to a couple of you guys who have actually come out and reached out to me, asking me questions. There was someone who asked me a question about what possibly a Florida king snake was, and I told them my best answer to that. Big thanks to you. I'm sorry I can't exactly remember your name today, but hopefully you're still watching these videos too. And if you guys have any other questions or comments or thoughts for how to improve this channel or anything else like that, let me know down in the comments. Message me on Facebook, on Instagram. I'm always there. I'll be happy to answer any questions to the best of my ability. Hope you guys are having a great day, and I'll check you next time.